Hello, everyone. It's Donnell McAdams and Megan, and we are here tonight with what I'm calling Back to Basics with the 6-inch spiral template. So I know we've got a lot of new people joining us, and so I thought I would just take one template and talk about it tonight. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go back to more basics and talk about the table. And it needs polished. It's not sliding as well as it used to. But before I actually polish that, I am going to clean the back of my mat. Now, normally I would take this mat and I would rinse it in warm water. And just as it's rinsing in the warm water, I would just go like this and get whatever's on there off. But I don't have time for it to dry, and you can't pat it dry. So I'm just going to use a clean lint roller. And it will actually, I just cleaned it. So when I'm finished, I'll show it to you so you can see what it's like. And this will suffice to get me through until I clean off my mat the right way, which is in the warm water. So you can see there's stuff on there. That was all on the back of my mat because I just had a clean, I just pulled off the old sheet, but you can see what all was on there. So it definitely had some stuff. Now I've already put in my bobbin that I'm going to need. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead, and you're probably thinking, but you didn't clean or polish your table. No, I haven't, because I'm going to polish my mat at the same time. So I've got that on there. It's now sticking good. And I actually just re-leveled it because sometimes those little legs change the height that they are. I'm going to ask you to put that back in that bag with those templates right here. I don't keep it very warm in my studio, and I just turned around, and Megan has her winter coat on and her mittens.
Y'all, she freezes me out every week.
It is not that cold.
It is cold in this room.
Oh, dear.
I guess that's one way that she can keep it all to herself.
So that's my little spot that I'm using, and I'm just going to put that on my mat and on my table and make sure that I get that all wiped on there, because this is a little microfiber cloth, and it's going to retain a lot of that polish.
Now, what are things that they should not use? Like if they don't have this table polish and they're just trying to use something in a pinch, I know that there are some things that we should never use on our table.
Right. And so I don't know much of anything else that works rather than table polish, but don't use any kind of Windex or cleaner on it that would ruin the acrylic. And trust me, it may not be a visual right now for you that it's ruining it, but down the road, you will be sorry that you did that. So I'm just using the table polish that was designed for our tables. All right. So now that I've got that, I want to show you, this has a little bit of residue in it from that, and that's fine. But when I put this in here, I'm not going to put this in because it's damp enough that will run my instructions. So I just lay it out. Tomorrow morning, I'll be good, and I can put it back in there. So now I've got my mat polished. I've got my table polished. I'm going to get my fabric here, and we will be ready to get started. Now, for those of you that are in the Starry Nights group that we've obviously been doing quite a bit of education on, I had talked about on Thursday this little thing, and I couldn't find it. And guess what? It was right under my table. So anyway, This is what's called a roll and press. And when we were doing our seams, because we couldn't press them because it was part of template, that's what I used to roll those seams. And so it really helps. You can use the little wooden iron, but this being a roller, I can get more pressure on it and it works a lot better because it's actually made ergonomically. So you can put your fingers in here and put a thumb right here, and that puts the most pressure down on the seam that you're rolling. So I just wanted to show you that. I'm still missing a couple of other pieces, and I don't know where they've gotten to. So I've changed my bobbin. I just changed my needle. And for those of you that are new to us, I am using a 90 top stitch needle, and I'm using a 40 weight thread. And that's pretty much like an all-purpose thread. Now, if you are a beginner, we definitely don't want you using any cotton threads, 100% cotton threads to get started, because they will really, they'll break more often than not. And so the polyester threads are better for those as we're just starting. So I'm going to get my 8-point crosshair square. And I am going to come down here in the corner. This happens to be my 12.5 inch. And I'm going to use my chalk marker. Now, one of the things that I'm finding, I've seen a lot of people saying my marker doesn't fit down into my openings. It's because you don't have this kind. It has to be this kind that has like the dolphin tip. It's flat. A few people have said that this has not fit down into their opening. That's when you're going to take and use like I use an acrylic nail file, and I just put one over here, but I'm not seeing it. But it's just a bigger file with firmer and heavier because it's for the acrylic nails. And you can just file the sides off here, there and there. And there's a little tiny metal wheel in the end. I don't know that you can see it there, but that's what lets the chalk come out. Now, I've been reading where people have filed in their crosshair square. You do not want to do that. We want those lines as exact as we can. And so you're just going to be able to roll that right out. Now, some of you have what is called the lipstick holder, and the lipstick, it won't fit in this. There's no way it's going to fit in there. So you have to have the one that's called the Chaco pen that will fit down in there, because that other one just will not fit in there. And don't be afraid to ask questions about that, because we're here to give you those answers. So Megan's right here monitoring these questions.
We did get a question if there was a handout tonight, and there is not. So if you want to take notes as you go along, just grab a notebook. It is just a back to basics. So some of you, this will be review, but for others, this might be new. So we hope you pick up something new tonight.
So what I'm going to show you is I am using my 6-inch spiral. I have tape in 5 places on both sides. And what I am going to tell you is where these arrows are. There's nothing magic about it, but it is what I'm going to use because that's the way I'm going to get the design that I want. So I pretty much leave these arrows on all the time. So to tell you, if I'm measuring from the squared off end, not the one that has the little head here or whatever, I'm going to come to 0 here. And this is going to be, I'm going to move it down so you can see. This arrow right here goes at 2 3/4 inches from the edge. So when I'm on this very edge right here, you can see it pointing there. That's 3 inches. That's 2.5, and it's in the middle. So that's 2 3/4. So if you want to measure from this edge and come out and then go straight up, that right there is from here to here, 2 3/4. Okay. The next one is at 1 3/4. That's the green one. 1 3/4. And then the last one just magically is at 3/4. So it's 3/4, 1 3/4, and 2 3/4. Now, honestly, I designed it. I designed the design that I'm going to show you, and I never even realized that that was all increments of that. I just put those where they needed to be to create my design. So that's kind of happenstance that ended up being just like that.
I got a question. I'm going to go back to the chalk for a second. Marie wants to know if we carry a stencil grid for the pounce chalk. She's looking for a 1 inch, 2 inch, and 3 inch block stencil. Is that something Sew Steady has, or should she just look at her local quilt store for that?
Look at the local quilt store. And since you mentioned that, Megan, I have to tell you that we frown upon putting links to our personal pages. So if you are tempted, just don't do that. You can contact the person that asked the question individually and tell them that, but we really can't put any links to any of those pages. So we encourage you to go to your quilt stores, local quilt stores, and then if you are still looking for it, some of us educators may have it, may not have it, but don't put those links on here. You need to go and find those yourself. So what we're going to do first is we are going to go ahead and get our machine set up. So I'm going to put this on to my ruler work. As I always do, I've got my ruler work foot. This is the one that comes with my machine. And remember, ruler work is different than free motion. And I'm going to take a second here and talk about this because I was email or Facebook chatting or something. I don't know what it was, but I was talking to a lady this week who was frustrated because she just never really can get it set on her machine. And it was because she was using free motion settings and not ruler work. And she said, but my machine doesn't have ruler work. And I said, then just leave it on straight stitch, lower your feed teeth, and adjust the height of your foot to your fabric and go. And you'll have no problems. And I can tell you that applies to a lot of machines that they don't have any setting for ruler work, because free motion is totally different. So sometimes it's just better to lower the feed teeth, set it for a straight stitch, and adjust the foot on your machine. And you may have a foot that will work for both, but you need to make sure you've got the settings set so that it'll work. And I can tell you, if you have any questions on that, I'll put myself right out there. You know my email. You can contact me. We might end up doing a FaceTime to get that set, because I know how frustrated I was when I first started. I was trying to do everything in the world and I had issues, and I had a top of the line machine, but I didn't have all of those settings. So I just want you to know that it makes that. And I see Becky said that she's found that out with her Husqvarna. And that's one that I was trying to work with too. And when I finally just set it for straight stitch and went from there, I had no problems at all. So I'm going to go ahead and put my foot down right here in the center.
Sorry, I had to laugh. I'm going to put my foot down.
Oh, I'm going to put my foot down. Yeah. Okay. I am going to put my foot down. So I put the foot down. You'll notice I still can move everything. I'm centering that right in the middle there. And I'm going to put my needle down in the center. And I'm going to bring up my thread by pulling up my foot and doing what we call flossing. And I don't know that you can tell it or not, but I'm using a variegated thread today. And the main reason I'm doing that is I know the design I'm going to start with has no stitching back on itself. So it's going to really be pretty to just have a single row of stitching in all of this. So with that being pulled out, you can see my bobbin thread is just one of the colors that's in that thread. It happens to be blue because I really didn't want to waste my thread for my top that's variegated on the back. So now I'm going to go ahead and put that needle down. It is a 90 top stitch. I think I mentioned that. And the weight of my bobbin thread is the same as the top, and that's a 40 weight. Now, I'm going to be using all of these markings. I'm also going to be using this little spot right here to hook it around. Now, if I don't have these lines on here, I don't know exactly where to start. And so I figured out I want a line that will line up on top of my registration lines. So I marked this line. You don't have that on your rulers unless you've been to a class with me or bought it from me at a show and I actually marked it for you. But you can mark it yourself. This is from this edge to that line, 5/8 of an inch. So all I did to mark that was I used an X-Acto knife. I put the 5/8, it's between 1/2 and 3/4, and I laid it right down on there and held it super, super tight. And then I just used an X-Acto knife. So if you're wondering, an X-Acto knife looks like that. And you just want to go slowly one time across there. And if you're not steady with that, find somebody that is, because you don't want a messed up line. In fact, you may choose to put a piece of just regular Scotch tape on there and draw your line. That may be the best thing for you to do. So either way, you don't have to have it, but I just like for you to know the hints that make sense to me. So now when I set this on here, I can just take my etch line and put it right on top of my registration line. And you'll notice, look there, it moves right to that line. So I'm going to be stitching out to here, and I want my needle to finish right there in the line. So my needle might not be there that I stop, but it's pointing to the line that I stop on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out this way, and I'm going to stop. Now I've got my nice big open wish table here, which is 22.5 by 25.5. And so I've got plenty of room. I could just turn this around, line it back up, and come back to there. Or if it's easier for you, go ahead and just turn this around and put this in back where it was. Find your spacing gauge. That's what I plan to do here, Donnell, is find my spacing gauge. There it is. It's on my necklace over here that hangs on the side, and we can get these from Sew Steady. They're called Notions necklaces, and it's nice to be able to have this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure, because I want my needle to land right back there. So I'm going to measure and pull my template up to that spot. Now, in a perfect world, which I don't live in, that point would be on that line pointing to this, but it's not. So I'm going to make it so that I come right back to that center. When I get back to that center, I could do any of the lines, but I'm just going to take this and move that etch line up to that line. And look, it's right on top. This curve, that etching, is right on top of what I've already stitched. And that's why it's nice to mark that 5/8 inch line on there. We're going to come right to here. And I'm going to stop. I'm just going to turn it around this time, come back to what appears to be 1/4 of an inch, and then measure it. Well, that time it's just like it's supposed to be. And we're going to come back to right there. I'm going to push that around, and I can line it up so it's right on top. As you can see, I'm going to pull it around so you can see me stitch. It's right on top of that. This one is right on top of this. And so now I'm going to come out to that line. Again, you can just turn this around and go like that and measure, or you can rotate the whole business. Hopefully you're starting to see some of that color in there. Pull this around, line up here. I have to tell you, this was my scariest template when I first started. And I was kind of challenged to get a design together with this so that I could get over that fear, so to speak. So I have a class, it's on the university, called One Template Wonder. And it's all done. It's a large, probably 28 by 28. And it's all done with this particular template. So you can go on there and you can see that and decide if that's something that you want to do. But I tell you, it will definitely get you feeling comfortable. And the fact that you can do a whole design, in this case, with one template. Some of you may have already done that before, done that class even. But I think you're going to see, because I'm going to stop at each stage of the game here and show you what all we can do with this template. Got two more lines to do. Laying that there, because that's about right. And then putting it on the line and on the line. So if you're new, fairly new to working with templates, send us some hearts so we'll know who is new and if we're giving you some information that you need. But I like to have my, and if you take that class, you're going to see that I use this same, I say line up the blue arrow. So ruler stickers are available from Sew Study. And if you're just putting new ones on, I know this is the way I do my classes as far as having those colors, and I reference it to those colors. So now we're done right here in the center. That's a pretty design. I think you can see. Can we get them a little closer, Megan? Anyway.
Not without taking it all out.
I'm going to see a bit here. I'll try and get you guys a little bit more spot on here. She doesn't want to take her gloves off. There we go. That's a little bit closer, I think. But anyway, you can start to see the coloration in that. And that's pretty just by itself. I've gone in and around there so much that I'm just going to take my foot up and use my sharp little embroidery scissors and get right in there and cut that. So let's see. There we go. So that can be just by itself, that can be, your design. Now, what I'm going to do this time repeats the same thing, only I'm going to use a different color. So I'm going to come and I'm going to put it on this arrow here, and I'm only going to do the 4 north, east, south, and west. I'm not doing these here. So foot down, green arrow, measure in the center for your 1/4 of an inch. And I know that's a little out of your sight there. Keep telling yourself, and if you can't remember, for example, maybe you have this on something that's not exactly square, then just give yourself little marks so you know which ones you're going to do. It's going to come right off because it's iron off chalk. Thank you for saying that, Barbara. She said it was fun and pretty. The One Template Wonder. What am I doing? I'm trying to measure something that doesn't even need measured. So now I think I've got just this one left to do. And if you'll notice, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. There is actually a line there, an etching that will line up with. So when I'm doing that, I wasn't even paying attention. But it's easier to follow the arrows out here than try and remember which of the etch lines matches up. So now we've got that design. That can be a standalone design, just like it is right there. Or I can go ahead and add all of that back to the 4 lines that I didn't do that on. And you'll notice I can find that it's a little bit easier just to turn everything. Just look for the lines that don't have 2 on them at this point. And whenever I'm designing something with my stitching line disc on paper, I actually do just what I did there. Do 4 and see if I like that, see if it needs more. And that way you can always add. You can't erase, you can't subtract. Well, you can, but that involves a seam ripper. But this way, when you draw, you're going to get what it looks like without having to go through the testing. So I'm coming back here, and now all 8 points have 2 of them around there. So again, I'm going to go, and this time I'm going to put them on the diagonals first, which is this one right here. And I'm going to that pink line. And again, there is one that lines up back with the first one. I still just like to use the pink arrow. Just going to come across here. And then we're going to do these 2. So I know it was out of vision, but you can see I'm lining the pink up with the line. And for those of you that have not heard me talk about this, for me to get my fairly even stitches, I set my machine to a medium speed, and I turn my foot pedal on the floor around to the back so that when I step on it from the back with my toes, it will only go medium speed, and that will pretty much make it so I don't even have to think of my control there. You hear my machine stays consistent. It's not like a jumping start and start. So this right here is with the diagonals having 3 and the straight having 2. And you'll notice that when I put my ruler on the edge, it's more of a square design. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the 3 here because that'll bring it back to more like a circular design. But when I just do the diagonals, that keeps it kind of a square, so it'll fit into a smaller area. Now, when I go ahead and put the third one on here, it will bring it out more into that circular design. Always make sure you got that right up against there. And another question I've been asked several times this week was they're getting a new machine and they want to know if they can use low shank templates on a high shank machine. And the answer to that is yes. You can use, this is a low shank template here. You can use low shank on high shank. The other way around does not work. So you cannot use high shank on a low shank machine. So just a reminder there. If that's something you may be updating your machine in the future, you may want to consider that. I purchase all low shank. I do have some high shank, but I purchase all low shank going forward mainly because I don't want to have to travel with multiple sets of the same template. All right, I think I've got, oops, no, I've got one more right here. Now, I think you can see how you could do just like 3 of these, meaning 3, just like these 3 positions. When I take it off, I'll show you what I mean. And then put that in a triangle. So this being the last one, and knowing that there's a lot going on there in the center, I'm just going to take a few stitches back to the side. I'm going to bring up my thread from the bottom, not to tie it, but so it won't be left on the back. It's easier to pull it to the front, and then all you have to do is cut it. And so that way you won't have anything left on the back. Now, I know some of you are just antsy to see the back, and I'll show it to you, but you're going to be shocked because I've just used a piece of any old fabric. There's what it looks like on the front.
Yeah, you might not like the back.
Megan just saw it. Yeah, see there? We got a flower print. I don't think you really like that. I've got a bunch of stuff going on there. And the reason for that is because I use my stuff twice. So you can see I've stitched all over this, and then I just laid a new one on top so that for my practice, I get a lot more out of it. Back there, I was practicing my rope template. So you can see that that is used twice, and it just saves some money. So anyway, we have that design stitched on there. Questions?
Yeah, Bonnie wants to know where can she get this template to purchase? And I think our first answer always is your local quilt store.
Well, this is part of the sampler set. So this one comes in that original sampler set. So if you don't have the sampler set, this is the template that's going to come in there. There are 6, actually 7 templates And it depends on whether you got it during a promotion, because we even had the bloom template. So there were 8 templates in there. But this is just part of the sampler set. It's one that, as you can see, is really fun, got a lot going on. Megan, I'm going to plug this iron in, and so we can iron these lines off of here so that, you know, they can see it a little bit better. But as I told you, it was one of those that I was like, oh no, I can't use this. I don't know how. I can't do what I want. And now it's one of my favorite templates, because my positions that I just used and showed you are not set in solid stone. You can make smaller ones of these and, you know, have a smaller design. But I think it's just really cool to be able to do that in a variegated thread, because obviously it doesn't cross over anywhere and give you any kind of funny lines going on. Do I have this turned on? Let's see. I think I do. Yep, it's getting warm. So anybody have any other comments, questions on that? Yeah, I saw that. I don't know. Everyone needs the sampler set, somebody said. I guess it was Regina. And I would agree with this, because the sampler set is truly the one that has a little bit of everything. You could sew and sew and sew and never get out of the sampler set, to be honest with you, because there's so many things that you can do with those. Do you guys want to see some more things with different templates from the sampler set? I can take time and show you that. So I'm going to get my iron here. And just so you know, my iron pad here has a backing on it, so the heat's not going down through. But it just looks so much nicer without that, and you can see how easy those lines are pressing off. I love the Chaco markers. Because like I said, when I was marking those just lines out, there's one right there. I'll go ahead and get it off of there, but I can mark all over it, and then it just goes right away. I see a couple of yes, please. All right. Maybe if I hold this back a little bit. There. You want to fix the screen for me, honey? There you can see most all of it. All right. So with that being said, let me find my sampler set. Mine is so old. I mean, I've had it forever. This happens to be the bloom template that you may or may not get, because that was part of it at one time. This particular template comes with the foot. So honestly, this is like the #1 basic template you need to have. If you didn't buy a foot from Westerly, you probably don't have this, but you can get it separate. It's called the 12-inch arc. It's not 12 inches. It's only about 6.5, but it is a basic template. Here is the Spinifex 4. That's part of the sampler set. The spiral is part of the sampler set. The 2-inch simple circle, oh my gosh, so many things you can do with that. And the spinning wheels 36. And that is one that there's a lot you can do with also. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the spiral. What am I missing? Oh, the little 4-inch arc. A little 4-inch arc. So I'll show you some things that you can do with those. Don't know that we'll get through all of them, but I'll certainly do my best. And I'll even leave the bloom out in case I can get to that one too, she said as she was trying to find what she just put away. Okay. So I'm going to show you this. So Steady will have a booth at all of these OSQE events. So if you are near any of these locations, make note of this. You can even take a screenshot so you'll have it. Those are the dates. One of us educators, or maybe even two of us, will be at those events. So definitely, make note of this. You can go to sewingexpo.com. You can see the classes. I will be teaching at clear down to here. I know for sure I'll be teaching at all of those. So you'll want to get signed up soon because they go fast. And I think the class is called Play Date with Templates or something like that. And then there's another one that is a lecture. And if you see me giving a lecture, I can't remember what they've titled it, but it is definitely for all sewers and quilters, not just template quilting. I'm going to show you a bunch of new notions and all of the ways that you can use them. And there's some demo and there's some trunk show in that. But it's an 1.5-hour lecture that goes by so fast, you'll be shocked. So let's first of all start with this template. That is the scallop template. And so I'm going to make a straight line. Let's see, we need a line going this way. And I will show you with the large because I want to compare it to how you can do different sizes. So this particular large size is a 3-inch. Boy, I messed that one up. So from here to here is 3 inches. On the smaller side, it's 1 inch from loop to loop. Okay. So what I'm going to do with this one, I'm going to start down here. I'm going to put the line on that edge line right on top of my registration line. I'm going to come to this end, and when I go down into this spot, my needle will land right on the line because the distance from that needle to the bottom of this loop is 1/4 inch, meaning that I am going to have the spacing so that every time my needle will come back in my line. So here we go. Boom, I've dropped down, I'm right on that line. The space from there to there is 3 inches. From here to there is 1.5 inches, which would be the radius of that circle. When I get to here, I'm going to stop and I'm going to move over. Got to get my fabric laid out here. Now this time I'm going to do just 1.5 of these, because what I want to do is use this as an all over design or one that's going to fill like a 4-inch border or something like that. So at the half point, I'm moving up and I'm putting that line right on top of the hill there. And this is where the clamshell is formed. And if you're lined up like you're supposed to be, you're going to get right back down and stop with your needle right in the top of that hill. Right there. And you can see there and there, it's right on top of that hill. Now, let's say you come over here and this is off a little bit. I don't know if you can see it because there's a glare. Maybe that's better. That is off less than 1/8 of an inch. Okay. Do I worry about it? Absolutely not worrying about it. But I just come up to my top here. And then at the top, I can just scoot this over to get it right where I want it to be. Keep sure that that's right on top there and come on down. Nobody knows that there is an 1/8 or less difference up there. If I was going back the other way again, I would stop at the top of that hill and come up and go right there. Now, that's the same thing that you would do with these little ones. Okay? In fact, I think I have one here to show. Did I stitch open? Oh, there's one right there. You can see I've made a design, and I'm going to show you how that is made there with the small side. You can do it with the large side also, but I'm going to show you with the small side. So let's just go right here, line that up. A little hint, you guys. If this happens where you've got part of it off, all you need, and I'm not sure where mine is, but I'll just use this. All you need is another piece of a scrap that you can sit this on so that there's something for it to grab. So I'm going to come right here, put my foot down, and I would obviously pull that thread up. Okay, and then I'm going to move up. If I want to do what I just did, I would do it that way. But I actually want to show you how to make a border with this. And again, this would work with both sides. You're going to line this up, this right here. You're going to line it up with the bottom. That's right, I got to cut this. So what did I just not do? There we go. So I'm going to line it up with the bottom line on the top of that hill and this across from that line. So when I start here, this is called Egg and Dart. It's a pretty traditional design. And you can make that dart in there larger by just pulling this down and not having it so close. But that can be made with the larger template and the smaller size. Now, if you have, in one of my favorite sets, I say that about all of them, but if you have the set that's called Simple Circles, you will be able to make any size scallop you want. But remember, you do have, if you have the sampler set 1, the 2-inch circle. And it has lines coming out the side here that I can do the same thing. I would pull my thread up, but it's a sample, so I'm not going to worry about. And I'm going to come around. I'm going to slide over. So instead of 3-inch circles, I've got 2-inch circles. And I can do the same thing with this, with all the circle sizes. So like right here, I'm going to stop at the top because there's a line back there. I'm going to move up. I'm going to put this line on top. This line is on top. And now I can use my circle to make a smaller clamshell. And I have circle sizes up to, I believe, 6 inches with my simple circles. So I can make some pretty large clamshells so I could do this as an all over design. So there's a 2-inch, there's the 3-inch. This down here is the 1-inch, and the distance we're measuring is from side to side. This is obviously always half of what this is because it's a circle. So this is 2, that's 1. So any circle that you have, you can do this, all right? Now, you could use, and I'll go ahead and show this, you could use your Echo Guides. Now, really the only one that's going to apply is probably the 1/2 inch. You could try the 3/4, but if you're not familiar with Echo Guides, they're like new shoes for your foot here. So I'm just going to put that through that expansion slot, put it back at the back. And a little bit about this. These Echo Guides, I keep mine on one of these little elastic bands, but these Echo Guides, when you use them the way they're intended, the opening at the top is bigger than the one at the bottom. So when you can read the number, you've got it the correct way. However, if you have a foot that's a little bit smaller, you can flip it over and go this way to get it to hook onto your foot better. If that's not good enough, then just take a little piece of your perfection tape, and that's this pink tape that I use. And I think Nan's on here, or Nanine, I'm not sure I say it correctly, but she's an educator in Sweden, I think. Is that right, Megan? And I know I saw her name a while ago. And I think she's the one we first experimented with on this because she couldn't get it to fit her foot. And so with that said, we just went ahead and tried this method and it works. So we're going to turn it to the back and we're going to put this tape right across the back here. And then I use that X-Acto knife that I showed you a while ago. And I just came right straight through the center and then just kind of make your openings this way. And then just put that right down through there. And now when you put your foot in there, there's even more space taken up. See, I can just take my finger and go like that. And so now my foot will not allow this to slip off. Now, if it still does, put another piece of tape. That just makes it even more so that you've got space there. And that tape will come off real easily. So what in the world would I want with Echo Guides? Well, I use them all the time. It allows you to have a whole lot of different things that you can do with your templates. And mine are just on this little, so I just keep them on this little silicone because this is a magnet. And then I just put it onto my rod here above my, it's actually part of my light. Now, when I've got this here, I'm just going to come down here and we're going to make another line on top of this just to get an idea. Well, I think I'll draw it. So I'm just going to draw another line right here. We're going to come down and set that foot right in that line. Put that needle down. Well, oh, I picked up my presser foot from the back. That was not smart. All right. And now when we do this, we're still lining up the same way. Keep it on the line. So this is taking a 1/2 inch off. So it should be, if I'm thinking correctly, 1.5 inches. Stop at the top. Line this up again. And we can still do these clamshells. So I think you get the idea right there. Let's measure. Yep, it's 1.5 inches because this is taking up more space. allowing us to make another size simply by adding those echo guides. So that's another fun way to use that. Now I've got some things I want to show you with this template, this circle template. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I call my bubble border. You could do it with any size. Pull your thread up here. And this is what I call flossing. So floss that underneath there, needle back down, and we're going to make a circle. Well, unfortunately, a circle starts and stops in the same place. I need to be back here at the top, so I'm just going to go on around again. Now, I let that move the first time, so that's moving right there. You wouldn't want that. I'll show you going forward how to keep that from happening. So now when we're here, we don't want this double side on the same side because our eyes pick that up. So we're going to go the opposite way. And because I held my template like I should have on the first one, it's right on top. Move forward, go this way. Now, another thing that you can do is you can put some pretties in here. I call them flourishes or feathers. And I'm just going to turn that in so that when my acrylic touches the line I just stitched, I'm going to go about 3/4 of the way up. Wait till your needle stops, pull it into that line, and go about halfway up. Pull it into there and go about half of that. So you can add some real little pretty things into your lines or into your design. So this is your border. And again, if you wanted a smaller border, you would use those echo guides and get a smaller circle. So there's so many different things that you can do with our templates. So we could spend all night on this one, but I think we're going to move on to one of the other ones so that you can see what we can do. We've used that one. There's a lot that I do with this one, I will tell you that. But the main thing that it was designed for is a little 5.5-inch flower. So I'm going to get my, there they are. So I'm going to get my smaller 8-inch crosshair square. And I have to tell you guys, it's not like I'm really, really old, but I am. But when we first started doing template work, we didn't have these crosshair squares. And when I do a design like this, and I think back to when I did it before I had a crosshair square, it's like, are you serious? No wonder I had so many problems, because we like to have the ability to match things up. So what we're going to do with this is we are going to use a simple thing called a thumbtack. They come with your templates. And it truly is just a flathead thumbtack, except I put it through a piece of tape, because rather than putting it through the fabric in the intersection and then bringing it back up, I'm just going to tape it in place here. And that way I don't have to worry about having holes in my fabric. So on our template, we have an A and a B, and right in the middle below it, there is an opening. That's the hole for the thumbtack. And I'm going to line it up right at that point. I'm going to come to the A, and I'm going to, you can see it just kind of stops right there in that divot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my needle down, my needle up, and pull out that thread. Put that foot back down, put the needle back down, and we're never going to sew between A and B. Okay? Never going to sew between A and B. We're going to go around this way and come back to B, and there'll be a divot there, and I'll stop. I'm going to rotate this to the right so that that line, it comes to my next line right there. You will notice that my B has moved back to A. Line this up. I think someone asked how this grabs on. I can't tell for sure, but this is stable tape that's on the back of our templates, okay? And it is a tape that comes with your templates. You're probably going to want to order more because of the fact that you'll need it all the time, because sometimes it wears off. And then this tape is a tape that I have found that I happen to like because it doesn't leave residue. And on this case, there is actually underneath here a gate that I can take out when I need to do this with a design that I have to stop with one spot and then move the template so I don't have to break my thread. Now I'm going to pull this back out of the way because this is my last time. And this is coming over here. And then I'm just going to back stitch a couple stitches. Oh my goodness, my bobbin's empty. I guess I won't even do that. So I'm just going to cut the thread so you can see my design. So I take that off. I would bury those threads. And so that's the design that we get. Now I'm going to get my iron here and take those lines out for you. So now you can see what that design looks like. Right around the corner is my sample, so I can show them what this would look like if I did 2 of them. So what I'm going to show you is if we'd have left our lines on there and we still had that on there, if we would have put the line or aligned it up in the center here, you would have had, are there more? Because this is not the right one. It would have looked like this, because that would have been the first one right here, and then we would have done it offset. Now you can't just go around and do them all at the same time. You won't get this pretty in the center right there. And then of course you can echo around there. And with that, I used my straight edge and my echo guides. So I'm going to get one more piece here and just go to the bloom, because I heard somebody say, I want to see the bloom template, because it's time for us to be finishing up. What did I do with my other piece of black fabric? There it is. So I'm going to show you that bloom template, and if you don't have it, I would encourage you to get it because there's a lot of things you can do with it. And the Bloom template looks like this. It does not have a hole in it. And I am going to use the 8-point. Now, I've concentrated on 8-point rather than the 6-point. But if you have a 6-point, you can get a different looking design, obviously doing the same thing. And another secret I'm going to tell you is when you get going with this, you don't need the lines except for out here in the outer areas. So I'm just going to take, and you can see how I've got those out that far. And then I just need to cross it in the center so I know where to plant my needle to start with. So you can see there how I've got that. Put your template in. Put your needle down and bring it up. Oh, that's why we had to stop. Because we have an empty bobbin. And this is one of those machines you don't go any farther with. It is done. It is done. Make sure you get that bobbin in all of the places it's supposed to be. If you start having a, people call them bird's nest, I always called them rat's nest. But anyway, the same concept. So put that back in the center there. Needle down. And we're going to do it this way. I'm going to rotate so you can see what it's doing. This is one you want to practice a little bit before you just jump right in there. And the only reason is that spot right there, it's kind of, you kind of got to get used to it or you'll have huge stitches. Because it just kind of falls off the earth. You can see as I come there, I just kind of hesitate a little bit. For some reason, it doesn't happen on the other side for me. But as you can see, we're developing some little inside designs there as we do this particular template. See, we did that one. Always when you get back to the center, if you're not exactly in the center, if I put that there, there's my needle, that's over. I'm going to just kind of lift it up that one stitch and get it back so it's in the center. Because when you're working with templates, the design, like a secondary design, won't develop if you don't get back to the center each time, or it won't develop correctly, I guess is what I should say. That's one that didn't. Now again, I'm just going to go ahead and cut this so that you can see what we've got here. Oops, I did miss one. Let me go ahead and finish that. I thought it looked funny. Should have checked before I pulled it out. So I've got an extra thread right there. But you can see, let's look at this half of it. You can see how that secondary design developed right in that area there. So I've got one that's already finished and got all of the markings pressed off. So let's just take a look at that one. So there's what that would look like. Obviously great for doing template quilting with. And that will fit in a, looks to me like a 5 or 6 inch, 6-inch block. That will fit perfect in a 6-inch block. And then if you do it so that one is one way and one's the other. So in other words, I did all of these with the point going out, and then I flipped it just as pretty going that way. This was with them all going out. So you can see, you can use that one template and get a lot of different effects on with just using the one template. And then on this one, I echoed it, and then I used my 12-inch arc to do these designs. And the way I did that, well, let me just show you how I did that. Can you reach that template back there? Thank you. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just take my spacing gauge at 1 inch, and I'm going to go ahead and draw it straight and draw it along there. So I'm coming out 1 inch from where the design is. Two more here. Actually, I think that was my spiral template. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure with my spacing gauge to this spot. Put that up around there and measure to this spot. This is using that 6-inch spiral that we started with. And it looks like a circle, but it's not perfect. There's little indents, but that's okay, because when we do the second part of it, it will make sense. And I hope what we've been showing you tonight is good for you that are new, but that those of you that have been with us for a long, long time still gain something from it. Now I'm coming right back to where I started. And I could turn my template over and use this coming back, but I'm not very good at that. So I am going to turn my whole design, turn this the same way as I've been using it, and measure that 1/4 of an inch. And it will bring me right back to where I intended. And then I'm going to stop here so I can show you how you can add one little other element in any template. But I'm going to open the gate of this one. This happens to be my Spinifex 4. I'm going to get it straight because I can line it up right there at that spot. And obviously I would have done this on every single one, but this is a way that we can keep working. I call it working in tandem because you're using two templates. So we're measuring here. I could even have used the bloom template if I wanted to. Coming back in here. I'm coming back here and lining up with that spot right there. So I've taken that 6-inch block clear out to a 12-inch block with not a whole lot of effort. Are we having fun yet? I hope so. Obviously, I'm not going to have space there, but I'll continue on around here. But this is the way I build the designs on paper that we can then do on our fabrics. And I just want you to see that there is a use for stitching line discs. If you don't have any of those, you want to get some of those. They're just little discs that allow you to take the space of your foot into consideration when you're drawing. All right. So you can see how I could have done the outside, come back with the inside, and then added each one of these as I went from one place to another, and done all of that with no stops and starts until it's obviously right to the end. So I think we're going to stop with that for tonight. Are there any questions here before we go? Hopefully you have learned a little bit here how you can use just the simple sampler set templates and also the bloom template to do a lot of different things. So thanks for joining us tonight. And I can't think of anything next week, so we'll see you next week at the same time. Bye now.